know what's wild about today's political landscape? The absolute showdown we just witnessed between Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Trump defender Karoline Leavitt. If you haven't caught this political slugfest yet, buckle up because it was nothing short of spectacular. Picture this. Capitol Hill transformed into what felt like a comedy roast stage, with Crockett armed with facts, sass, and a legal background that made her verbal takedown of MAGA talking points absolutely devastating. It wasn't just that she disagreed with Trump and Leavitt's positions, she systematically dismantled them with the precision of someone who spent years in courtrooms arguing actual cases. What makes this clash particularly noteworthy is the stark contrast in approaches. While Leavitt has positioned herself as the Gen Z defender of all things Trump, enthusiastically spinning every controversy like an overeager PR intern, Crockett brought something entirely different to the table: actual legal expertise and zero patience for nonsense. The confrontation highlighted a fundamental disconnect in how these representatives view their roles. Crockett pointed out something genuinely profound about the current political climate: that lawmakers aren't listening to their constituents' pain regardless of party affiliation. She emphasized how cuts being discussed would impact everyone across the political spectrum, from Democrats to Republicans to independents. Meanwhile, Leavitt's defense strategy for Trump resembled someone who had just skimmed the Constitution 5 minutes before going on air. She's been making regular Fox News appearances, spinning Trump's mounting legal troubles like they're just minor inconveniences rather than serious legal matters. With the confidence of someone deeply committed to a narrative, regardless of reality, she's been working overtime to reframe Trump's legal issues as political persecution. But Crockett wasn't having any of it. When Leavitt tried to brush off Trump's legal challenges, Crockett didn't just roll her eyes, she brought fire and footnotes. She made a critical distinction that cuts to the heart of the matter. This ain't persecution, honey, it's prosecution. One gets you sympathy, the other gets you orange jumpsuits. The exchange wasn't just political theater, it reflected two fundamentally different worldviews about accountability. Crockett sees Trump's legal troubles for what they are: the consequences of actions that violate actual laws. It's not about criminalizing someone for being a Republican, it's about holding someone accountable for breaking established laws that apply to everyone. What's particularly striking about Crockett's approach is that she doesn't rely on volume or hyperbole. Unlike the shouting matches we've grown accustomed to in political discourse, she brings a calm, measured, courtroom-honed precision to her arguments. She's not trying to go viral, she's trying to make sense. And in doing so, she exposes how hollow many MAGA arguments actually are when subjected to logical scrutiny. When discussing economic issues, Crockett highlighted concrete solutions from the previous administration, helping those struggling with student loan debt so they can create generational wealth, implementing child tax credits to offset high childcare costs. These aren't abstract talking points. They're policies with tangible impacts on people's lives. The clash also revealed just how differently these representatives frame America's challenges. While Leavitt was busy defending Trump's frustrations and trying to shift blame to past administrations, Crockett focused on the real-world impacts of current policies: job losses, economic instability, and the everyday struggles of working Americans. There's something refreshingly direct about Crockett's political style. She cuts through the noise and gets straight to the point. When she says, the only fraudsters that we see is the one that was actually convicted of fraud in a court, she's not just making a political jab, she's stating a documented fact. And that's the fundamental difference in her approach. She doesn't need to rely on hyperbole or conjecture because the plain truth is damning enough. So while Karoline Leavitt continues her enthusiastic defense tour, treating Trump's legal battles like minor speed bumps on the road to political redemption, Jasmine Crockett remains firmly grounded in reality, reminding us all that facts still matter, accountability is still important, and no amount of spinning can transform criminal charges into political badges of honor. Let's dive deeper into the circus that's been unfolded. Trump's legal situation has become increasingly chaotic. It's like watching a slow-motion car crash with more lawsuits than you can count. First, there's the hush money scandal, where moral compasses seem non-existent. Then we have the classified documents fiasco, where apparently Trump thought the National Archives operated like a fancy garage sale. And who could forget the election interference drama? When losing feels unbearable, why not try to have the courts fix it for you? Despite this mountain of legal troubles, MAGA Republicans continue treating Trump like some kind of political martyr. Every new indictment seems to strengthen their resolve rather than shake their faith. It's as if criminal charges have become merit badges in their world. The more you collect, the more devoted your following becomes. The hypocrisy is thick enough to serve on a platter. Jasmine Crockett clearly has no patience for this absurdity. What frustrates her most isn't just Trump's actions, but the normalization of his behavior by supporters like Leavitt. When Crockett says, "I don't know why we put up with getting data and facts if we're just going to sit here and talk about how we feel," she's highlighting a fundamental problem in our political discourse: the prioritization of emotional narratives over verifiable reality. Crockett brings something unique to these exchanges: actual courtroom experience. She mentioned handling thousands of criminal defense cases across Texas, Arkansas, and the federal level. This background gives her arguments weight that someone like Leavitt simply can't match. When Crockett speaks about legal matters, she's not regurgitating talking points. She's drawing from years of professional experience. What makes the contrast even more striking is how Leavitt attempts to deflect criticism by changing the subject. When questioned about Trump's education policies, she immediately pivoted to criticizing decades of education failures before Trump took office. It's a classic deflection tactic. Don't address the specific criticism. Instead, broaden the timeline to dilute responsibility. Crockett's response to these tactics is both methodical and fiery. She doesn't just disagree. She systematically exposes the logical fallacies and factual inaccuracies. Her frustration is palpable when she says it feels like being in an abusive relationship with both the administration and the Supreme Court. It's a powerful metaphor for the gaslighting that occurs when institutions meant to serve the public interest repeatedly fail to do so. The economy became another flashpoint in their confrontation. Crockett pointed to concrete evidence of economic distress, record stock market crashes, supply chain issues, and CEOs warning about empty shelves. Rather than engaging with these specific concerns, Trump defenders typically resort to vague promises or blame previous administrations. What's particularly striking about Crockett's approach is her refusal to engage with hypotheticals or whataboutism. She stays firmly rooted in demonstrable facts: court convictions, legal liabilities, job losses, and economic indicators. This grounding in reality makes her arguments difficult to counter with mere rhetoric. The dynamics between these two representatives perfectly encapsulate our polarized political climate. On one side, you have Leavitt, representing a brand of politics where loyalty trumps facts, where complex legal matters are reduced to partisan witch hunts, and where the solution to any criticism is to attack the critics rather than address the substance of their concerns. On the other side stands Crockett, representing an approach that demands accountability, recognizes the importance of expertise, and refuses to accept the erosion of basic standards of conduct for political leaders. Her frustration isn't just political, it's the frustration of someone watching institutions and norms being dismantled in real time. The stakes of this confrontation extend far beyond a single heated exchange. At its core, this clash represents two competing visions of democracy itself. In Leavitt's world, loyalty to a person supersedes commitment to principles or laws. In Crockett's vision, no one, regardless of political status, stands above accountability. When Crockett speaks about Trump's legal troubles, she's not just scoring political points, she's defending the fundamental principle that laws apply equally to everyone. Her passionate defense of this principle comes from understanding that once we start making exceptions based on political affiliation, we undermine the very foundation of our legal system. The body language during this exchange spoke volumes. While Leavitt appeared increasingly uncomfortable, Crockett maintained the composed confidence of someone who knows exactly what she's talking about. Her hands moved purposefully, physically swatting away nonsense arguments like annoying flies. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. One representative scrambling to maintain a narrative, the other systematically dismantling it with precision and purpose. The moment Crockett unleashed her full fury on the MAGA narrative was nothing short of spectacular. There she stood at the podium, laser-focused and ready to take on the carefully constructed fantasy world of Trump defenders. Her delivery was a masterful blend of courtroom precision, classroom authority, and stand-up comedy timing. She didn't just speak, she performed a political exorcism, driving out falsehoods with razor-sharp facts and context. What makes Crockett such a formidable opponent isn't just her legal background, but her refusal to play by the usual political rules. While many Democrats tend to get tangled in nuance and qualification, Crockett cuts straight through the noise when she points out that Trump has the lowest approval ratings at their 100-day mark both times he's been in office. She's not throwing random shade. She's highlighting a statistical reality that contextualizes his unpopularity despite the fervent support of his base. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt has emerged as the Gen Z defender of Trump, a role that's about as credible as appointing a toddler to teach quantum physics. Her Twitter feed reads like a high school debate class after consuming too many energy drinks, enthusiastic but fundamentally disconnected from reality. If there's a ridiculous talking point to be amplified, Leavitt delivers it with the confidence of someone who doesn't realize they're broadcasting their own misunderstandings. The education debate between them perfectly illustrates their different approaches. When questioned about education failures, Leavitt immediately pivoted to criticizing decades of problems before Trump, citing trillions spent since the Department of Education was founded in the 1970s with supposedly little return on investment. It's a classic deflection. Don't address current policies, instead zoom out so far that specific accountability becomes impossible. Crockett's approach to Leavitt isn't just dismissive, it's educational in the most brutal way possible. She doesn't just counter arguments, she exposes their fundamental emptiness. When Leavitt attempts to talk about constitutional matters, it's painfully obvious she's working from a superficial understanding, like someone who read the preamble off a bumper sticker, but now fancies themselves a constitutional scholar. The contrast in their backgrounds couldn't be more stark. Crockett brings the weight of actual courtroom experience, thousands of cases across multiple jurisdictions. Leavitt brings enthusiasm and talking points. One has spent years navigating the complexities of our legal system. The other treats legal matters like team sports, where what matters is who wins, not what's actually true. This clash isn't just about personalities. It's about two fundamentally different relationships with truth itself. Crockett operates from the position that facts exist independently of how we feel about them. When she says, "I don't know why we put up with getting data and facts if we're just going to sit here and talk about how we feel," she's highlighting a crisis in our political discourse: the subordination of objective reality to emotional narratives. The most revealing moment came when discussing immigration and crime. Drawing from her extensive criminal defense experience, Crockett noted that the vast majority of her thousands of cases didn't involve immigrants. This firsthand professional experience directly contradicts the narrative that immigrants are driving crime rates, a cornerstone of Trump's political messaging since he first came down that golden escalator. What's particularly refreshing about Crockett's approach is that she's not just playing defense. She doesn't merely react to MAGA talking points. She proactively frames issues around concrete impacts on everyday Americans. She talks about cuts to federal jobs, plant closures, and the toll these policies take on working people. She grounds abstract political battles in their real-world consequences. The frustration in Crockett's voice reveals something deeper than political disagreement. It's the exasperation of watching democratic guardrails being systematically dismantled while half the country cheers it on. Her comparison to an abusive relationship with both the administration and Supreme Court captures the psychological toll of witnessing institutions meant to serve the public interest being warped to serve partisan ends. While MAGA supporters treat Trump's legal troubles like badges of honor, Crockett refuses to normalize lawbreaking by political figures. She understands something fundamental about democracy, that it depends on accountability regardless of power or position. Once we start making exceptions based on political affiliation, we're no longer operating under the rule of law, but under the rule of personalities. The stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just about winning news cycles or scoring political points. It's about whether we maintain a shared reality where facts matter, where laws apply equally to everyone, and where accountability isn't optional for the powerful. Crockett's passionate defense of these principles comes from understanding that democracy itself hangs in the balance. So while Karoline Leavitt continues her enthusiastic defense tour, treating serious legal matters like minor public relations challenges, Jasmine Crockett stands firm in reality, reminding us that no amount of spin can transform criminal charges into political achievements. The contrast couldn't be clearer. One representative working to maintain a fantasy world where her candidate remains unassailable, the other fighting to preserve the principles that make democracy possible in the first place. Next time Leavitt wants to get constitutional with Crockett, she might want to bring more than rehearsed talking points to the battle. Because if there's one thing this exchange made crystal clear, it's that in a contest between carefully constructed political narratives and hard legal facts, the